Why do I think I need that thing to do what I want? What is the end result? Okay, is there a way to do that without the thing? Of course there is. Is there a way to just get to that point without needing the thing? Of course there is. See, I do this all the time because of physical location and not wanting physical things. But even just paths, a lot of people want to get rich so they can be free. But they're just choices you can make along the way to be free without needing to get rich in between. Maybe you've been too diffused and you've been saying yes to too many things. And so you hear, if it's not a hell yeah, say no. And you think, that's what I needed right now. I need to raise the bar. I've had the bar too low for what gets a yes. I need to raise the bar all the way to the top and say no to basically everything that doesn't thrill the hell out of me. It's a specific tool for a specific situation. If you're overwhelmed with options, if you've been saying yes to too many things, well then hell yeah or no will be useful to you right now.
Hello everyone, I'm Larry Weeks. Welcome to the Bounce Podcast. My guest today on this podcast is Derek Sivers. Derek is proof that an unconventional background can be the perfect foundation for not only a wonderfully interesting life, but can be a great foundation for groundbreaking success. A, quote, career, unquote, doesn't have to be a straight line or have a fixed endpoint. Especially today, careers are dynamic and they require adaptation to disruptions. So Derek was originally a professional musician and circus clown, and he was the founder of CD Baby in 1998. It became the largest seller of independent music online, with over 100 million in sales for over 150,000 musicians. In 2008, Derek sold CD Baby for $22 million, giving the proceeds to a charitable trust for music education. And his TED Talks have garnered over 20 million views. I just counted the three of them. He has published 34 books, including Hell Yeah or No, Your Music and People, Anything You Want. And his most recent book, as it pertains to this conversation, is How to Live, 27 conflicting answers and one weird conclusion. But note, we do slightly touch on his current, yet-to-be-completed book, Useful, Not True. So, on the show, Derek talks about his transition from musician to circus performer to entrepreneur and author, and he helps me connect the dots as I push him there. We talk about the power of books and new ideas, the concept of useful, not true, and the practicality of a belief versus the accuracy of a belief. Very interesting. I asked him to revisit the hell yeah or hell no decision heuristic that was in his book, Anything You Want. He explains creativity and some oblique strategies for releasing creative potential. We talk about embracing unpredictability and the use of a random generator. Very interesting. And then there's this little thought experiment I'm going to call the pragmatic rabbi approach for simplifying problems, which I'm now using, which is pretty cool. So listen for that. He gives me his thoughts on songwriting, the relationship between songwriting and book writing, and how transferable that creative strategies are between the two. We discuss seeing emotions as ends, bypassing things as means. Yeah, so I'll let you stew on that for a little bit. And he explains the orchestra instrument framework. And something that really struck me in the conversation as well is the motivation of being temporarily abled. It really changes your perspective on things, and it's very motivating as well. And we get into how he deals with negative emotions or a bad mood, and we talk about the practice of journaling to understand emotions and situations better. The conversation is wide-ranging. There's so much more here. To whet your appetite, Tim Ferriss calls Derek a philosopher king, programmer, master teacher, and merry prankster, and one of his favorite humans. And after chatting with Derek, I certainly understand why. I think you will too, and I think you can tell I really enjoyed talking with him. He was a delight. So please enjoy. Derek, how the heck are you?
Good.
You're in a sound studio.
I am.
Wow.
There were too many times that I needed to record an audiobook or something, or just record a podcast, and neighbor was mowing the lawn or something like that. And I was like, well, screwed, I can't record today. So I thought, the cost of going into a recording studio versus the cost of just buying a little recording booth just made sense to me. So yeah, I'm standing in something the size of a phone booth, completely soundproofed. They could be, setting off explosives outside my window and you wouldn't hear it in here.
Remember, I booked Seth Godin, and I have this automatic email that goes out that I don't do anymore, but because everybody's doing podcasts, but it was just automatic. And went, hey, make sure the audio quality, you have a mic, So Seth sends me this email with this. He's like, this tone was basically, Larry, I have a television studio in my house. And I was like, Seth, that wasn't for you. But anyway, very cool. Derek, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, I love what you're doing. I checked out your past podcast. I like your style. I like what you're doing. So yeah, I'm not here to promote anything. I come with no talking points. I just wanted to...
Listen,
all right, now for real. Hi.
I'm a big fan. I just want you to know that. And I know you have fans all over the place. Not that you're asking, but the reason is you have this eclectic background. And I'm incredibly curious as to how you got where you are today. So just because I'm sure everybody listening, at least in my audience, probably knows who you are. But for those who don't, let me make sure I have this right from your bio. You were a musician, then a circus performer, then you got into the CD baby business or the business world, the entrepreneur world. Now I'm truncating, I'm sure, but is that, and then to author?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the path maybe makes more sense from my point of view, that at the age of 14, I just wanted to be a musician. All I cared about was music. And so from the age of 14 to 29, I just single-mindedly pursued this one thing. All I wanted was to be a great musician. So that's all I did from 14 to 29. Laser focused. But then at 29, I was selling my CD at a time in 1997 when Amazon was just a bookstore and there was no PayPal. And if you wanted to sell your own music directly, there was literally not a single business anywhere on the internet that would do it for you. So I built my own website to sell my CD with a little shopping cart. And it was so unusual at the time that all of my musician friends in New York City said, whoa, dude, could you sell my CD through that thing? And I said, yeah, all right, sure. Just as a favor to friends, I set up this website to sell my friends' CDs. But with damn lucky timing, it quickly became the largest seller of independent music on the web and took over my own aspirations to be a great musician, which I had been doing for 15 years at that point. So actually I was welcoming a change of pace. So then for 10 years, I ran a music distribution company called CD Baby, which was a big success. But then I made a lot of mistakes while doing it. So after I sold the company, while the rest of the world was telling me that I was a success, Seth Godin asked me to write a book about it. And so I wrote a little book called Anything You Want that was the story of how I started, grew, and sold my company and the mistakes I made along the way. And then that book was a decent success. And so then people were looking at me more as a writer than as an entrepreneur or a musician. And I realized that all of my heroes are writers. And one of my favorite things in life are books that change the way I think. So I realized that this was my new focus. So yeah, for the last 10 years, I've been focusing mostly on writing great books. And I'm writing my 5th one right now.
That is a cool story. I don't think I've ever knew the step-by-step from there to here.
Larry, yeah. I forgot the circus. The circus was in the middle of, during my time pursuing my music career at the age of 18, while I was at Berklee College of Music in Boston, an agent called and asked if looking for a guitarist to play at a pig show. And then an agent actually called the bass player in my band And he said, I don't want the gig. And he said, do you want it? It's playing guitar at a pig show. It pays $75. I was like, hell yeah, my first paying gig. And it was like a $55 round trip bus ticket up to Vermont to play for $75. But it was my first paying gig. I was so excited. And I played at a pig show. And when I came back to Boston, the agent called me on Monday and said, yeah, apparently you did a good job at the pig show. I heard good things about you. So look, I've got a circus and the musician just quit. We need a new musician. Do you want the gig? And I said, hell yeah. So for 10 years, from the age of 18 to 28, I was hired as the musician, but then they quickly told me that the quote unquote musician was basically the ringleader MC musician of the circus. So for 10 years of my life, from 18 to 28, I did over 1,000 shows as the ringleader MC/musician of a circus in New England.
Okay. So you performed as a band at a circus, but you also, you were the ringleader? You
Oh, no. So I was the solo. Like if you were to go to the circus, you would have thought it was my circus. I was the guy that came out like the MC at the beginning of the show and in between every act. But I had a guitar on and like a drum set on the ground, like one of those like street performers that you see where they've got the both, they're playing guitar, singing with a drum at their feet. You've seen somebody do that,
Mm-hmm.
So I was doing that for the circus. I was the one-man band ringleader MC of a circus in New England. But the life of a working musician in New York City is you just say yes to whatever pays. So if somebody said, I'm looking for a jazz pianist for an art opening, I'd say, that's me. I'm your guy. I can do that. What does it pay? And if somebody says, hey, we need a heavy metal guitar solo on this disco record, I'm like, that's me. I'm the heavy metal guitar solo guy. I can do it. So that's how you make a living in New York City as a musician, is you just got to be good enough to say yes to everything. I was never a great jazz pianist. I was never a great heavy metal solo guitarist, but I could do enough to get the gig.
Did the music ever call you, or did you ever do it again once you had an X amount of success, whether that's with CD Baby or whatever, to say, hey, I'm going to start a band now?
It's funny. Do you know Mark Manson, who wrote the book Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck?
I've interviewed him. Yep.
Okay, cool. So Mark and I were just talking about this last week. A thing we have in common is we both used to play guitar hours a day. Like it was our main thing. And then once we started writing and writing took over our life, we both later went back and tried to like get a nice guitar and start playing again. And it's just both had the same experience. Like it's just not there anymore. Like it's just not... the fingers can still do the thing. And he said the same thing too. It's like my fingers still know how to do all those scales and arpeggios, and I still have the physical dexterity. It's just that it's not my mode of expression anymore. So after a few years without playing, I went and got a really nice guitar and I played it for an hour and I went, it's just not my thing anymore. I'm more fascinated with the thoughts and ideas I'm writing about these days.
Yeah. Well, we're all thankful for that, but I'm just curious about that kind of life change, or,
It's surprising to a lot of people. We think of, I do think in a way that I'm a musician for life.
You're creative. You're a creative, and that takes many forms. This is my opinion. That can take many forms: speaking, writing, acting, playing an instrument, communicating with people, and so there's something about connecting with people, but there's different mediums to do that, I'm guessing.
Yeah. You've had some big career changes too, It's
yeah.
Sometimes we take a single mission and express it in different ways. So in a way, like I think that I've always been looking for alternate perspectives, whether that's through music, kind of saying, okay, well, here's the way the Beatles wrote that melody, and here's the way they got those chord changes. But here's the way that Fela Anikulapo Kuti does it in Nigeria, who's one of my favorite musicians. But now what if I were to take the Beatles' approach to melody and mix it with what Fela Anikulapo Kuti is doing? But then I really like the way that these trip-hop producers kind of mess with the frequencies and cut off the high end. And And so let me try to combine those and see what happens. And I'll like do that. Like that's how I would make music. Or I'd hear an Elvis Costello melody, but I'd want to mix it with this Bjork style arrangement and sing like Sigur Rós or something like that. And I try to mix these things to just try to find a different point of view. But then I start a business by accident, like I told you, just because people asked me to. And I think, okay, well, the way that most people do business is this, but I don't know, that just seems kind of stupid to me. Why not try it like this? Like, what if I were to give away all the profits in a way and like let the, like I just find different ways to, alternative ways of thinking of whatever I'm doing. It's like an ongoing experiment. Let's see what happens if. And then now I guess I'm writing books. So it's like, well, most people tend to approach the world this way, but what if we like deliberately adopted this belief system and tried this? Then what would happen? And most people tend to just sign a deal with Penguin and let Penguin publish their books. But what if I were to do this all myself? How would I like to do it? And so to me, that's like this common thread of whether it was making music, then making a business, then doing my books. It feels like it's all the same thing for me.
It's a medium that you're playing with. Is that how writing is? Like, and I don't mean the ideas because you just expressed that, but I mean the actual phrasing and wording of what you're writing. Are you thinking of that as well? Like,
yeah. I'm glad you brought this up.
What if I said it this way? Or
yes. Oh, Larry, it feels like songwriting now that people tell me that my writing style is unusual. And I think it's because I'm still taking the same approach I took when writing songs. Because I wrote over 100 songs over 15 years. And so now, like, there's a certain way when you're writing a song, you've got a melody. Let's say you've already got the melody and it's, da 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 da. And it's like, I've got 5 syllables and I want to say this. How do I express this in 5 syllables? Da 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 da. I'm like, but the emphasis on the syllable has to match the melody. And so you really kind of craft every single word and syllable. And I did that for 10 years of my life, for 100 songs at least. And then now as I'm writing books, then I've got this idea, but I don't want to be blah, 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 and fill 400 pages full of nonsense that could be an article, right? Like it's the number one criticism of nonfiction books is when people read this 300-page book and they go, it could have been an article. I think, I agree. There's often 30 or 40 good sentences in a 300-page book. So how can I just write the good sentences and leave out everything else? And so I use my songwriting techniques of sweating every syllable,
That's your next book.
Well, that's all of my books, honestly.
The songwriting, writing technique or something. Yeah.
Right. Songwriting and writing. Right. No, so my last book, the newest one that's currently out is called How to Live. And I took that to an extreme. It's almost like poetry because I was trying to
like
express
haiku or something.
Yeah, almost. Yeah. It was almost like everything I've ever learned in life in one book. So the rough draft was 3,000 pages. And I was like, okay, there, I've said everything I want to say, but I'm sure as hell not going to publish a 3,000-page book. So it took me 2 years to compress the 3,000 pages down to 112 pages. It's now basically every sentence that's left in that book used to be a whole page, and I found a way to express a whole page of thoughts in one sentence. So it means there's not a wasted word in there. It's an unusual read. And the new book I'm writing now called Useful Not True, I've spent years thinking this way, but casually. And people kept asking me about it. And I got more and more interested in looking deeper into why I think this way, why I choose thoughts that are useful, whether or not they're true. And so I spent the last year and a half researching the idea more and kind of thinking how I'm going to write it and dumping a lot of my thoughts, a lot of input, a lot of output. And now just about a month ago, I'm actually writing the final words that will go into the book, which of course are very short and punchy, but it's after tons of, unfiltered thoughts put into my notes. And so these days, books are my favorite thing in the world. I'm such a fan of these philosophical nonfiction books that change the way I think about the world. It's one of the greatest feelings in life to me, is to feel your brain changing and rewiring upon hearing a new idea. And you go, oh, whoa, I never thought about it that way.
High five.
Are you high five? I wasn't, that's funny. Like those of you just listening, Larry kind of put his hand up to the camera. I was like, wait, are you telling me to stop? Oh no, good. He's high fiving.
No, amen. So the best thing that my parents ever did, but my mom, I credit, by the way, my mom, who did not graduate high school, read more than my father, who did graduate high school. And then she instilled, you said it beautifully, the books blowing up my brain, give me another world. I'm going through a tunnel. I'm another dimension. What? Mystery. What don't I know about what I don't know? Just this whole turtles all the way down. It's reading and ideas, man, And so my mother, I love monsters. I still do to this day, just monsters and scary movies. And I was instead of race cars as a kid, I collected monster models and spent hours painting them. And I had Frankenstein. I had a 6-foot poster of Frankenstein on my bedroom door. And my mom, I wanted a magazine. It was called Creepy Magazine. It was a comic. It was a black and white comic, all scary stories, And I said, Mom, can I have this mag? She ordered a year subscription and anything that I wanted to read. Well, luckily I was a fairly square kid, but the creepy thing, the monster thing, that's kind of weird. She was like feeding this desire because I would spend hours in my room by myself. And now I've got libraries of books, and I'm nowhere without these books. I would have gotten nowhere, I don't think,
Yeah. Same.
Books and reading, and that you touched a soft spot in my heart. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. And you put it beautifully. It's like the way that it kind of expands your mind and blows up your previous notions when you take in something new. And it can be a philosophical idea. Like just one that comes to the top of my mind right now was a great little book called The Courage to be Disliked, which is a Japanese author.
Is it
good.
Alder,
yeah.
Alder, yeah.
Alfred Adler or Alder. Anyway, but the one little idea in there of saying the core of all interpersonal trouble is when you are trying to interfere in someone else's tasks, or someone else is trying to interfere in your tasks, that we each have our own tasks to do. And then he says, and you know whose task it is, because it is the one who is ultimately most benefited by this choice or action. And so it's like we have some preset notions, whether it's through our culture or religion or whatever, that says things like it's good to help others and whatnot. And so to have this one idea to say, no, trying to interfere in other people's tasks is the core of all interpersonal trouble, kind of goes, whoa, hold on a second. Now I have to rethink everything that's ever happened in my past and rethink the way I'm going to approach the future. Like, if this is true or if this works, I mean, because true is, that's a different subject. But if this lens, this viewpoint works, what are the implications? Oh my God, this changes everything. Okay, so it could be that. That's, to me, a philosophical viewpoint mind blower. But sometimes, like you mentioned, information, it can just be there's a world that you know nothing about. Some people feel that way when they learn about poker. They go, oh my God, there's a whole universe here of things to dive into about poker, and that fascinates them. I just went to the Middle East for my first time this year, to Dubai, which ordinarily was a place that would have been in my top 10 list of places I never want to go. Fuck that place. Sounds so shallow and commercial and crass and sounds like a big shopping mall. That's the opposite of what I want in life. But I challenged my prejudice and I got off the plane for 2 days. And luckily, before doing so, I read 3 books about the history of Dubai and met up with people that live in Dubai and are from Dubai. And oh my God, now I think it's the most fascinating place in the world. And this whole universe was opened up to me of this part of the world that I knew nothing about before. So yeah, it is one of my favorite things in life. And if it seems like I'm really excited about writing, maybe it's because I'm often disappointed in the verbosity of people's books. Such low information inside all that verbiage and all those unnecessary examples. Yes. Yeah. And so then I think I want to fix that. I think often a lot of creativity comes out of discontent. You know, it was often I'd hear other people's music and I'd think, no, you're doing it wrong. Here, I'll show you. I'll do it better. And I think the same thing when I read a lot of other people's books. I'm like, damn, there's some really inspiring ideas in here. And there's also a lot of noise. I want to write books that have great ideas and are all signal with no noise. Wow. Anyway, we could change the subject.
No. This is fantastic. Can I ask you about the book that you haven't finished yet at the end of our chat here?
Yeah.
Okay.
So wait. So listeners, Larry asked me a week or 2 ago, like, hey, can you give me an advance copy? And I so badly wanted to. I mean, in the moment when you asked, my first thought was, yeah, sure, let me send you. So I was like, oh man, but I'm changing this like every day. I'm actively spending, 6 hours to 12 hours a day just writing this thing right now, and whatever I were to send you. So I even thought about like, should I send it to him that morning? But then I was like, that's putting too much pressure on you for like an hour before we hit record. So instead, I'm happy to just talk about it for now. I've put the ideas out into the world a little bit over the last year as I've been working on it.
So, yeah, but I want to talk about how to live, because I'm always looking for good advice or salient pieces of information on how other people live. And okay,
it's funny. I haven't talked about the How to Live book in a bit, but let's see if I can do this in a short, enticing way. When you read books like Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, says you should live as such, and then you read a book like Atomic Habits, which says, no, live this way. And then you read, say, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which says, no, live this way. And then you read maybe a Tony Robbins book, which says, no, you should live this way. You read The Power of Now. You read, and all of these books are like their own little universe where everything is correct if you follow this life methodology. Just do what I say. Life will be wonderful. But they all conflict with each other. But they're all not wrong. And so, pause that for a second. If you had to pick one book as my single favorite book that I haven't written, then it would be the book Sum by David Eagleman. Do you know that one?
I do. I've never heard of that book.
Oh, good. All right. SUM by David Eagleman is a tiny little book with a fascinating format. The subtitle is 40 Tales from the Afterlives. It's fiction-ish. And he's answering the question, what happens when you die? But he's answering it in 40 different ways. So one chapter will say, when you die, you're surrounded by a bunch of little thuggish creatures that are looking at you saying, what is answer? What is answer? And no matter what you try to say, they just look confused and they just keep saying, what is answer? And it takes you a while to figure out that you are an artificial intelligence program, that what you knew as your life was actually the running of a program that these creatures wrote to figure out the meaning of life. But now the program is done and they want to know what you've learned. But you try to explain everything you've learned in life, but they're just too dumb to understand it because you've grown smarter than your creators. Okay, but then another chapter will say, chapter 9, when you die, you're immediately greeted by somebody that says, well, in that life, you chose to be a man, but once again, as you chose to be a human last time, now you can choose any creature to be. What would you like to be? And this time you decide you choose to be a horse. But as soon as you make your choice, your body starts turning into a horse, but then you start to feel your brain turn into a horse's brain. And you realize that you didn't love the simple life of a horse. What you liked was being a complex man, admiring the simple life of a horse. But now that you're turning into a horse, you're forgetting what a man even is. And at the last minute, you try to change your mind, but all that comes out is... And in the last second before you become a horse, your final thought is, I wonder what kind of complex, beautiful creature I must have been before that chose the simple life of a man. So it's 40 beautiful little short stories, all answering the same question 40 different ways. And I love that book so much. I read it twice. And then one day I went, oh, I want to write a book called How to Live in that format. Taking all of these philosophies in life, saying, here's how to live for the future, do everything for your future. Your present self is in service of your future self. This is how to live. And if you follow this to the logical conclusion, therefore you must do the following things. And this is all the reasons why this is the correct answer. This is how to live. And the next chapter says, here's how to live. Live for the moment. Fill your senses. The past doesn't exist. It's just your memories. The future doesn't exist. It's just your imagination. All that really exists is this moment right now. Do everything for now. Fill your senses, And then the next chapter will say, here's how to live. Follow the pain. Whatever hurts you is good for you. So in every single way, every day, whatever hurts is what you should be doing. The pain will guide you to the path you need. And the next chapter will say, here's how to live. Live for others. Live generously. This is what we're all here on earth to do, is to live for others. And so my little tiny 112-page book called How to Live is subtitle 27 Answers and One Weird Conclusion. So it's 27 answers to that one question, how to live, in 27 conflicting chapters. How'd I do? How was that for a summary?
Well, you did great. And I wish I had known the story of some as a framework before I read the book. Because now I'm thinking, how would that book have affected me with that? Because I didn't have hangers to hang the ideas on, because they were conflicting.
Yeah. Deliberately conflicting. It was meant to spin you around.
Yes, but there was a purpose for the spinning that I wasn't fully aware of till you just now told me. I mean, I was kind of aware where you're going, but so first of all, I get the fact. So let's say there's a car accident. If you have on a street corner and you have somebody on every corner of that street, they're going to see something a little different.
Yes.
Same accident, right? And life is like that. So let me go ahead and see if I can still ask these questions. What kind of resonated with me, but also I want to get some clarity from you for some of the points and where they fit into the whole. So let me start with decisions, because you are also very well known for the book Anything You Want, right?
Yeah.
And in that, what hit the cultural jet stream was this hell yeah or no. What's worth doing? And you wrote a book. I think you wrote another book about it
later. Yeah.
I've had other guests on the podcast. We talk about decision making, and some of it uses probabilities and neuroscience or statistics and weightings and all this. When I first heard, is something a hell yeah or no? And if, by the way, if I'm not phrasing that correctly, let me know. It really resonated with me because I think we're always going through decisions, but there have been some big decisions I've been trying to make, obviously was trying to make in the past. So, I wanted to use the framework hell yeah or no. And something got in the way. So it might have been that it was a no. I don't know, reflecting on it. It might have been that it was a no, but I didn't have the courage to say no. I'm not sure. And in this book, you talk about no choice is inherently the best. You touch on decision making a little bit. You talk about delay action. I really like this. You say delay action. You don't have to respond immediately. You can think through something, especially if it feels important to you, very important to you. You said just wait maybe to the next day or just delay it, which is also a decision framework I heard before from Shane Parrish. He says, before you make the decision that you're going to, whatever the decision is, you're going to make the decision, write it down, but then sleep on it. The next morning, look at it, or the next day, look at it and see how you feel about that decision. So, nice. Don't actually tell the person or pull the trigger on whatever it is you're going to do, but make it internally and then reflect on it. So the hell yeah or hell no, would you modify that at all? Is that still a heuristic that you recommend?
Yes, but I'm going to fit it into what we were just talking about before, which is the format of the How to Live book. The weird conclusion that's referenced in the subtitle is a picture on the last page of the book of an orchestra seating chart with 27 instruments in the orchestra. Not coincidence that there are 27 How to Live chapters and then 27 instruments in this picture, because I see life philosophies like instruments in an orchestra. And if you were to go to a composer and say, which one is the best? You'd say, I disagree with the question. You can't say the flute. The flute is the best, or the harp. The harp is the best. It's like, no, you use different instruments at different times when needed. And in fact, we combine them all the time. It's not that one instrument in the orchestra plays at a time. You have the harp and the cellos playing, and then the oboe joins them. And then the harp and the cellos drop out and the oboe continues solo for a bit. Then the violins come in. This is how music goes. We use time. And each instrument has its own reason, its own voice. And so I think of that with any of these philosophies, whether it's a certain decision-making heuristic or a way of living that says delay gratification or live for the moment. These are like instruments in the orchestra. You can't declare them as right or wrong. You can just decide that this is what you need as the composer of your life. This is the sound you want right now.
It's a menu. This is what it's on the menu.
Yeah, it's a menu. And this is what your life was lacking right now. Maybe you've been too diffused and you've been saying yes to too many things. And so you hear, if it's not a hell yeah, say no. And you think, that's what I needed right now. I need to raise the bar. I've had the bar too low for what gets a yes. I need to raise the bar all the way to the top and say no to basically everything that doesn't thrill the hell out of me. It's a specific tool for a specific situation. If you're overwhelmed with options, if you've been saying yes to too many things, well, then hell yeah or no will be useful to you right now. It doesn't mean it's the answer and that everybody should say hell yeah or no all the time to everything. Of course not. It's one instrument in the orchestra.
That's perfect. Yes. Things can be seasonal.
Good word.
And, I used to think about this, like, I used to think of like Tony Robbins and kind of the motivational frameworks that he would use. And there was a time when I was turned off by them for a while, right? It was like, rah, blah, blah, blah. But then, because I was in a chill kind of a phase of what's it all about and the mystery of when everything's good and whatever, right? But I've recently found that those frameworks, some of those frameworks and that rah-rah, to get over a little hump in my life or a project or whatever, that is useful now, right? It's like, no, let me listen to that. Let me pull that out of the closet or let me pull that off the bookshelf and read that. It's appropriate now. And this is where I need the push. But a part of me was first discarding. Could you take the life advice that's in that book, or How to Live? And is there a way to have an 80-20? Is there 20% of that advice that you would say, hey, it's going to cover most situations? And this may be a difficult question in that sense.
I think they're really the 27 chapters in How to Live are a variety of intentionally conflicting ones. Like, the first chapter, it says, be independent. It's all independence. The most important, all misery comes from dependency. But then the very next chapter is commit. Here's how to live. Commit. The way to make any choice great is by committing to it, etc. And so it keeps going on with as broad a spectrum as I could think to cover. And that's why I said that it was like the first draft was 3,000 pages. I really took everything I'd ever learned in life and put it in there. And then I even had to figure out how to categorize it. I think at first I had 30. I was trying to get 40 because it was an homage to the book Some, and he has 40 Tales from the Afterlife. So I was trying to make 40 How to Lives to match his. But then I thought, I've really only got 30 categories I think they fall into. And then in the final couple months of writing the book, there were 3 chapters. It just felt like the weakest. So I cut those 3. But I took the bits of wisdom from them and fit them into other categories in the 27 chapters. Point is, I don't think any one is the answer. In fact, it was wonderfully appropriate that as I was writing it, I had a girlfriend that she related the most to the chapter that I relate to the least, which was the one that was just fill your senses, do everything for the moment. Or no, sorry. It was the do nothing. One of the chapters is like, here's how to live, do nothing. You don't have to do a damn thing. And she said, that's the one that speaks to me the most. This is the one that I feel, right? And I was like, wow, that's the one that was the hardest for me to put in there because I relate to it the least. So no, I think it's everybody's got their own nature and temperament, something that works for you.
And again, wherever you are in your life at any given moment, these are probably. So one that
what I'm opposed to, sorry to interrupt, but what I'm opposed to is anybody that then find that something works for them, going and telling the whole world that this is what you should do. So if somebody felt like if your life was too adrift and you felt that some kind of fundamentalism, following the ancient rules, this is what worked for me. I was too adrift, following these ancient rules to the letter. This gave my life meaning. Okay, great. That gave your life meaning. But then to go out and say, everybody must follow the ancient rules to the letter. And if you don't, you're evil. Well, now there's the problem. It's because just because it worked for you doesn't mean it works for everybody. So I'm very opposed to picking any solution and prescribing it to everyone.
Some of the aphorisms that, or the principles or the rules, I should say, that resonated with me. One, particularly, you write, most actions are a pursuit of emotions. You think you want to take an action or own a thing, but what you really want is the emotion you think it'll bring. And then later on, the whole experience of life is your mind. Focus on your internal world, not external world. That really rings true for me right now in my life, but it's something I discovered over time but I'm curious, are you there in your life? I mean, or have you been there for a while? Have you been able to notice or have an emotional life, a rich emotional life that's separate from an action or a thing?
Yeah. I've had to do that partially with my physical location in New Zealand, and I want to be here for my kid. I like being with him every week. His mom and I broke up when he was 2 years old, and she has a job here working for the New Zealand government. And so she needs to be here, And she also doesn't want to go more than a week without seeing him. Neither do I. So basically, all three of us are bound here because of her job. And so there are many things that I've wanted to do that would be best done by being somewhere else physically, whether that's New York City or, I don't know, Tanzania. And I think, well, I can't. So, okay, what was it I wanted out of that experience? Why do I think I need to be in New York City to do such and such? As well, it's because of this. And I think, well, I can't do that. So therefore, and I just find another way to do it. In my head, I try to go directly for the emotion I was hoping to get instead of thinking I need to think. Of course, I do that with physical things too. Minimalism, I don't even need the ism on it. I'm just happier when I have less stuff. Owning stuff makes me feel like a caretaker. And the more stuff I own makes me feel like I have to take care of more things. So there have been times when I've been tempted to get a thing to achieve a certain aim. And I stop myself and I go, wait, hold on. Why do I think I need that thing to do what I want? What is the end result? Okay, is there a way to do that without the thing? Of course there is. Is there a way to just get to that point without needing the thing? Of course there is. See, I do this all the time because of physical location and not wanting physical things. But even just paths, a lot of people want to get rich so they can be free. But they're just choices you can make along the way to be free without needing to get rich in between. I got a question just like a couple days ago. A woman said, I want to make a lot of money. Please teach me how to make a lot of money because I really want nice things. Maybe it's because I grew up in Russia, but I love really nice things. The things I like are expensive, and I love these expensive things. So I need to learn how to make a lot of money. And I said, I think what you're saying is there's a big hole in the bottom of your boat, and you're asking my advice on making a better sail. So I think you need to patch that hole in your boat. Otherwise, no sail will
the
work.
Need.
Yeah, the craving for the expensive things. You could just address that directly instead of thinking you need to make a lot of money to fill it.
So you also, another line, and I wrote a few of these down here, is, and this one is a head scratcher for me. Choose a life where you choose nothing. Let the random generator decide what you do, where you go, and who you meet. On the one hand, there's a spiritual part of me that resonates with, where, a form of letting go. But I'm not sure I get that. I'm sure I need to take it on face value, but how would you do that? What's the random generator?
I was trying to keep the book.
Hit me.
I was trying to keep the book timeless, so I didn't want to point to specific URLs and quote specific names. But there is a guy, if you search out there, I forget his name right now off the top of my head, but it's in my notes. There's a guy that made this his life's mission to choose everything randomly. And he's got a wonderful philosophy behind it. And so he uses a random number generator, and he opens up his randomness to the world, where he lets the world randomly pick where he's going to live. And then he moves to the place that the internet picked randomly. And then when he gets there, he uses a random thing to help guide him to where he's going to stay for the night, which he didn't plan in advance. And he has a wonderful philosophy about letting chance lead you to discoveries that your determinism would never have led you to. Because that we have a certain path in life, whether it's if you think that there is no free will, or that we just have certain tendencies that are always going to steer you a certain way, you could accept that and just go with your tendencies and accept that your life is written in advance for the most part through your DNA and preferences. Or you could kick and scream and resist that by almost obediently and blindly following what some other randomness picks for you and doing that thing. It's a beautiful way to live. And I think part of why I had to make sure to include this in the book is I think so many things that happened in my life were so random. And I think most of us can say the same, that there's some major things in most of our lives that were so random. You just happened to get this job because you just happened to know this guy at the moment that somebody else was hiring and asked this guy that you knew, that you only met him because you happened to go to this party once, but then he recommended you and suddenly you have a big important job that changed the trajectory of your life. But then because of the timing, because somebody in Wuhan, China ate a bat or whatever, now that company went out of business, which sent you on this path. Like, it's acknowledging how much randomness there is in our life and how so much of our life isn't chosen by us, but instead deciding that that's wonderful and deciding to emphasize and lean into that even more. And there's a methodology for doing so. I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, I was listening to somebody talk about trying to get magic back into their life, just this sense of magic. And they're not science deniers by any means. They're fairly secular, but this person started using the I Ching and got an app on their phone and, would ask questions for decision making and let the I Ching and, it would stack up the dominoes for the answer, interpret the answer. So I was like, well, that sounds kind of cool. So I downloaded it on my phone and I just started asking questions, things that I really was trying to decide on. Because on my laptop, I had spreadsheets and weightings and, boom. Then I would go, well, let me play with this. And it was really interesting and enjoyable to be open to this randomness, as you said, like, I Ching, it wouldn't be concrete. It would be very esoteric kind of advice so that you could project your own feelings into. There was something very cool about it. We have this illusion of control, and maybe we certainly have some influence, but to accept, what's coming and go with it rather than fight life, rather than white knuckle it, right?
White knuckle, yeah. Look up anybody who's interested in this. Go search the web for Brian Eno, E-N-O, Oblique Strategies. So Brian Eno is a record producer that's produced some of the greatest rock records of all time, from Talking Heads to U2 and Coldplay, and I don't know what else. Lots of David Bowie. Lots of the best David Bowie albums were produced by Brian Eno. And I like his music, but I love his theories about music. So one of his theories was that when producing records, we need to introduce a little more randomness. So what he did is made a deck of cards where he put a bunch of directives on the cards, like remove an important ingredient and double down on the most necessary thing, or now do it backwards. Things like this. They're ambiguous directives. They put 50 of these into a deck of cards, and then as he was producing records, he'd be there working with an artist in the recording studio, and at a certain point, they're like, let's ask the deck of cards. And the game was, you have to do what it says. Shuffle it randomly, pick a card, and here it says, make it scream. So he's like, all right, let's find a way to make... I never would have proposed that myself. It does not seem to apply to our current situation, but let's try it. And so it became a bit of a creative inspiration for him. So I think of that, the deck of oblique strategies applied to life. That there are times in life where it's like, well, could do this, could do that. Let's ask the I Ching. I'll just do what it says, even if it seems like the wrong answer, nothing I would have chosen. Who knows where it may lead me? Let's find out.
Yeah, there's something that, in my experience, draws out of you where you've made some connections. There's something about this, like a random generator, like the I Ching, or maybe those deck of cards, where there are ideas spinning around, or convictions or leanings or what have you, that you may not be aware of. And it seems, so far in my experience, that the things like this, where it's given you a subtle hint of a decision or recommendation, but it's pulling out of you really what you really want, or afraid of, or other things that you haven't looked at. I don't know. This is just, it's really fun to kind of play with these things. I've got one more thing here before we leave this book here. And thank you so much, Derek, for indulging
thanks for
me.
Reading this book. I'm impressed that you dug into it so deep and have thoughts and questions. Thank you.
The practice of storytelling to friends, you mentioned in the book, but you say when storytelling to self, you can cut painful memories to like one sentence. So, if there's something that's unpleasant you have a memory about, or a story around that you tell yourself, to get it down to one sentence. That sounds incredibly useful. But could you give me an example?
Yeah.
Okay.
Such an interesting subject. It's the reason why it feels good to talk to a friend, is inside your own head and heart, you have a bajillion scrambled thoughts and feelings all churning together, often in an unpleasant way, if you've got something going on that you need to talk with a friend. But then you talk with a friend who cares about you, but doesn't have infinite patience. They won't listen to the 9-hour version of this, but they'll listen to the 45-minute version of what's going on. So you find a way to try to summarize your situation into a 45-minute conversation with your friend, or into a 45-minute monologue, and just the act of doing that simplifies it a bit, which helps you feel a little more tranquility because you've simplified it. Now, I have not attended group therapy, but somebody who has said, that's what's wonderful about group therapies. Now you're in a group of 10 people that have come here willing to listen to other people's problems. But again, now we don't have 45 minutes for one person. We have maybe 10 minutes that each person can hog the mic. So now you have to take your thing that's a bajillion churning thoughts inside of you and think of how to summarize it in 10 minutes. And then you see yourself through their eyes. And that's so useful because we're the protagonist of our own life. But when you see yourself as just merely a bit player in somebody else's story, it helps you again make you realize that your problems are not so big. And in fact, they're quite small and manageable if you look at it from the outside. And that can be so useful. Then you realize you can do that to yourself, that everything we've just said, if you don't have access to a dear friend right now, or a therapist or group therapy, you could just open up a diary and start writing and think, okay, what am I really upset about? What's really going on here? How can I summarize this? What's the core of what's upsetting me? You can ask yourself these questions and make it simpler. And then you can look at that and go, oh, that's what it's really about, isn't it? I'm really just upset about this thing. That's not so complex after all. And you can do that with your past. If you feel haunted by something, you can think of a simple version of the story so it's not haunting you anymore. In fact, now it's just a little plastic statue of a ghost instead of a terrifying specter. You can do that about the future. If you're feeling a lot of anxiety and a future decision feels overwhelmingly important and crucial and complicated, you can find a way to summarize it for yourself so it essentially boils down to what matters. And you go, oh, now that I realize I'm thinking about it on this axis, well, then that's not so big and complex anymore. So I think that this process, whether it's talking to a friend on the phone, going to group therapy, talking to therapist, writing in your diary. It's simplification, summarizing can help make everything smaller and easier.
Yeah, I was thinking about, there's this another technique or tactic where you look at something like from a third party. You look at, let's say, a situation or a conversation or a fight or whatever it is, right? Something that's got a lot of negative emotion around it, and it rolls around in your head. But if you could look at it as just a camera recording something, kind of objectively, just with film, Super 8 film, running the camera and recording it. And if you could look at it from that perspective, the camera records it, and you're just kind of you're taking this feeling amplification kind of away from it. Because I was trying to think of something that was in my past that occasionally raises its head and bothers me. And then I was looking at your advice, and I'm like, okay, how would I boil this down? And it was almost silly, because it was like I walked into a room, sat down, had a meeting. He talked, I talked. And then I left. I mean, in reality, that's really what happened.
Right.
The conversation was difficult, but at the end of the day, it was a conversation,
Yeah.
And so boiling something down and stripping it of its emotional valence, really, it is helpful. What the hell,
This may sound crazy. I'm not Jewish, but I lived in New York City for 10 years, and most of my friends were Jewish. And I picture the cliche of the rabbi with the long white beard and no time for your shit. He's a very practical guy. And I imagine going to, I didn't actually do this in real life, but in my head, I often imagine, what would the rabbi say? And I've got this big complicated thing. And if I were to go have 5 minutes with the rabbi, or 10 minutes, and I'd go, blah, 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 here's my situation. And I always imagine the rabbi would go, so what you're saying is you tried it once and you were disappointed. So that's it? Okay. You tried it again? No, I didn't try it. It sounds to me like you need to try it again. Okay, don't bother me. And it's the guy that doesn't have time for your shit and just boils things down to their most practical essence. It's really useful. And you can just do this all in your head,
I got married much later in life, and I wasn't married long, and most of my friends have been married 20 years or longer. So I'm going to work with one of them one time, and I tell him I had a fight with my wife. I said, man, last night I had a fight with my wife, and I was upset. And he said, did anybody throw anything? I said, no. He goes, rookie. I was like, this is normal? He goes, Larry. It was the rabbi kind of response. Yeah, come back when you have a fight. That doesn't qualify. Okay. But Derek, before we sign off here, by the way, I wanted to ask you where the music industry, I don't know if you're still in it or think about it or investigate it.
No, I might even need to interrupt this question. Right. I don't know anything. Okay. When I left CD Baby, it was
because the world has just changed. Yeah. No.
I actually realized even while I was still at CD Baby, I was put up on panels in front of big audiences with moderators asking me about the music business. And I heard myself saying things out loud that were true a few years ago. And I realized this isn't true anymore, is it? I'm full of shit, aren't I? I don't know what I'm talking about, do I? No, I don't. I need to stop doing this. I need to stop having any opinions about the music business because I don't know anymore. And so then I sold the company the next year, and I deliberately looked away from it, thinking when I'm ready to get back into it someday, if I'm ready to get back into it someday, it will just have to be with fresh eyes, like I'm 16 years old again and I know nothing, because everything's changed. So sorry.
No, that's quite right. I have a lot of friends who listen to the podcast, and they're musicians, and they're doing things here and there, and I'm sure they would want me to ask. But
well, it's funny, I wrote a book called Your Music and People, which was again my culmination of every timeless lesson I had learned in my 15 years in the music business. Sorry, my 15 years as a musician and then 10 more years being the music distributor, the seller, being the guy behind the counter. So basically, I guess I was in it for 25 years in the music business. And I tried to think, what lessons are timeless? Like, what book could I write now that people could still read in 30 years and it would still apply? So my little purple book.
I didn't think I saw that. I did. Maybe I missed it. And what?
It's called Your Music and People. It's just 100 pages or so. And it's the little timeless lessons learned from my thoughts on getting your music into people's hearts. But I don't, this is going to sound like a humble brag for a second, but a real marketing nerd I know, who's like an absolute fanatic about marketing and lives and breathes marketing, I was really honored that he read it and read it metaphorically. And he said, dude, this is one of the best books on marketing I've ever read. I said, thank you. It's written to musicians, but it's also meant to be read metaphorically. I guess it's about humanistic, considerate marketing. Kind of
like Seth Godin.
Yeah, I was going to say, any fan of Seth Godin.
The show is about Seth Godin, basically. Derek, can you talk about do you want to talk? Can you just tease us with the new book that's not done yet? Or it's, or is it, or about to be done?
No. I'm still actively,
okay.
I'm about a third of the way through writing what feels like the finished words. No, it's over the years, let's just stay influenced by Tony Robbins. If any listener actually read his 1990 book called Awaken the Giant Within. So that's actually part of why I felt okay to bring it up, because you had mentioned him earlier. But yeah, I went and reread Awaken the Giant Within recently, and I thought, oh, this is where I got so many of my beliefs. It's a life philosophy that I read at 19 that changed the way I looked at the world. And I read it again at 21 and again at 23 and then again at 53. And I hadn't read it for 30 years in between. And I went, yeah, okay, this is part of why I think this way. He really advocates a deliberate choice of adopting a belief system that works for you now. Right. So let's say I'll just tell you one that worked for me recently. So I have a tendency to procrastinate exercise. What a surprise. I think I'm the only person on earth that does that. But then I heard one little idea, which is we are all temporarily abled. And it was written by a woman that got into an accident and is now paralyzed from the waist down. I might be getting the details wrong, but it doesn't matter. That said, let's all remember that at some point in our lives, you are going to be not as able-bodied as you are now, whether it's through old age or accident or something. So just remember that we are all temporarily abled. And for some reason, Larry, when I hear that thought, I'm like, oh, hell yeah, I'm lifting weights right now. Hell yeah, I'm getting out into the forest to go on a run right now.
Because you can, or because you're preparing for when you're not able, or both?
Both. Like I'm temporarily abled right now.
Yeah, that's good.
Fucking live it. Like I need to do this while I can. That belief is not absolutely objectively, provably, empirically true. It might not be true that I am temporarily abled. I might die at full health suddenly. But believing that I'm temporarily abled, for whatever reason, that works for me. That gets me to do the action I need to do. That helps me be who I want to be. That helps me do what I want to do. And so that I choose to adopt that belief because it works for me. Now, you might argue and say, but Derek, that's not true. So I don't care if it's true or not. It works for me. So in short, that's what my next book is about. It's called Useful Not True. And it's about first showing that all these things that people say like facts all day, such as, this is a great place to live, or you did a bad thing, or my ex was evil. People say these things as facts, but almost none of it is true. It's all just perspective. Then second, you have to realize your own brain does that too. Almost everything your brain thinks, it thinks is a fact, but no, it's just one point of view. And so once you've got complete skepticism and doubt for everything and everybody says and everything your brain thinks, well, now you get to just ask yourself, instead of judging anything as true or not, I'm going to adopt the beliefs just because they're useful to me now, because this is what I need to help me be who I want to be, go where I want to go, do what I need to do, or find inner peace. And lastly, deliberately adopting those philosophies, those beliefs.
So you've collected
That's my next book.
Beliefs. These are beliefs you've collected over the years, or you're looking at a spectrum of, okay.
No, I don't get into my beliefs I've adopted. The book Useful Not True is basically, first pointing out how almost nothing people say is true, then pointing out almost nothing you think is true, then suggesting that we judge ideas by whether they're useful or not whether they're true or not. And then lastly, adopt more empowering beliefs.
All right. What's your projected, do you have a goal as to when this book will be in the world?
6 months ago. Soon. I thought I was going to be done 6 months ago. I'm glad I didn't. I kept learning more information. I kept learning more insights, and I've been reading a ton. I never knew anything about religion. I learned a ton about religion as a way of thinking about this book, because those are the oldest belief systems.
Yep.
And so
it sounds interesting as hell. So yeah.
Thanks. It should be done very soon.
How do you get yourself out of a bad mood?
Ooh.
Or do you?
Ooh.
Do you just let it, don't mess with it? Or do you?
You know what I love? Sorry, actually.
Or do you never get into a bad mood? I can't see.
I do. Is it one of those chapters that got cut when I said that I narrowed it down to 27, and there was a chapter that didn't make the cut was choosing a funny life. Andy Warhol had a beautiful way of having funny philosophies in life that he would follow in a dry. So
that guy does not seem funny at all.
No, it's all dry. But read his autobiography called From A to B and Back Again, and he'll just say little dry things like, "My favorite piece of art is no art at all. In fact, the most beautiful dream I can imagine is I walk into an empty room, and on the other side of the room is a little hole in the wall. And I look through that hole in the wall, and there's another empty room on the other side." He said, "I'm doing a terrible thing by putting so much art into the world, because I think really any space would be better if it had no art at all." Right? So that's just a funny Andy Warhol thought, right? But the one of his is,
that's hilarious.
To get back to your question, he said, "I love a good rut." He said, "I love when I've fallen into a rut. Friends try to lift me out of the rut, and I say, stop it. I'm enjoying my rut. Leave me in my rut." And so I think that with when you're in a bad mood, you could say, how do you get out of it? Or you could do the Andy Warhol thing and say, oh yeah, awesome. I'm in a bad mood. I love being in a bad mood. Great. Leave me to it. Anyway, what do I personally do? Actually, I journal. I've done this for years. Whenever I'm feeling really foul or resentful or angry, bitter, anxious, fearful,
you're right,
I turn to my diary and I break it apart. And I'm like, okay, what's really going on? Why am I feeling this way? What's really wrong? What's the point of this? Why is that wrong? What do I wish would have happened? How would I like it to be? Yeah, and I write it all down. So I've been doing this for 30 years. And only 2 years ago, I learned of something I'd never heard before called cognitive behavioral therapy.
You've
AKA
never heard
CBT.
of CBT?
I had never heard of it.
Huh.
And so I got a little book called Cognitive Behavioral Therapy for Dummies. And I went, oh, this is what I've been doing my whole life. Basically what they're prescribing and people say works well is what I have already been doing for 30 years. And so I think that's a lot of who I am is because, for all my foundational years since I was a teenager, basically, I've been doing hours a week of CBT without knowing that that's what it was.
Wow. I had David Burns, one of the pioneers of CBT, or certainly one of the popularized.
The musician?
No, David Burns, medical doctor.
Okay.
pioneer in cognitive behavioral therapy.
Okay. Wouldn't that be interesting if you're like,
yes.
the singer of the Talking Heads is the pioneer of cognitive behavioral therapy.
So, wow, that threw me.
You may ask yourself, what is this beautiful thing? You may say to yourself, what have I done? Yeah, I can see David Byrne, cognitive behavioral therapy. That works. Anyway, sorry.
Derek, thank you so much for coming on. Another question. Sorry, these things are coming randomly. Is that are you playing? So I would consider yourself, because you're a programmer, right? Or you were you came out of technology and digital distribution and the whole nine yards.
I mean, well, not really. I mean, I was just a musician that set up a website, and I taught myself programming out of necessity. I didn't go to school for it or anything like that. So I'm a very practical programmer.
That's cool, though. But still, wow. All right. That's even more impressive to me.
I love it. I'll just interrupt to say, many times I think, I should. I'm getting old. I'm writing books now. I should hire somebody else to do the programming. I should quit trying to do all the programming myself.
Okay.
But I love it so much. Every single line, even in fact, cdbaby.com, every line of that code was me. I did it all myself. I didn't have a team of programmers. I had 85 employees, and none of them was a programmer. It was just me.
You're crazy. Yeah, you're
I
nuts,
love it,
man.
But it makes me happy. Every time I try to delegate it away, I get really sad. I'm like,
you're creating.
I should do that.
You're creating.
Yeah.
You're a creator. You're making something.
It's philosophical too. Like when you're programming, you're deciding in every line of code, you're making philosophical decisions about what we're actually doing here. What's the point of it all? So I love programming.
Are you playing with AI? Are you playing with it?
A bit. I have started keeping chat.openai.com open as I'm writing. I never have it generate text for me, but I use it like a sounding board.
That's what I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Thesaurus. Sometimes I use it as a thesaurus. Sometimes I'll ask it like yesterday I just asked, list some examples of religions that contain no beliefs. And so it said Zen Buddhism and a certain sect of Jainism and a couple other ones that I hadn't heard of. So then I'm
was Hinduism in there?
No.
Okay.
I'd say actually Hinduism, from what I've learned, seems to be more system, about the beliefs.
Brahmin. Yeah.
But so then I'll say, okay, please list the core tenets of, say, Hinduism without naming the beliefs, but only the actions prescribed. And it's really good for this stuff. And again, I don't know if it's true or not, but that same question, I'd have to sift through so many web pages of puffery and ads and clickbait to get that information. And I really appreciate OpenAI for just giving me a paragraph of information of plain text. It's so appreciated. Yeah. Anyway, for when I'm done with this book, I'm going to put aside some time into playing with it for my own use.
Derek, thank you for coming on and taking the time.
Sorry, I thought I felt like I interrupted you. You were going to ask a question and I interrupted to say I love programming. But you were going to...
Yeah, it's gone. I don't...
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's all right.
I just have to make this choice whether it's the right thing to do to interrupt or not.
It always is. You're a Pandora's box. It's like, you answer a question, another question comes, and I'm like, what? Where's that? So you and AJ Jacobs are one of the most interesting people.
Oh, I love that dude. He was, I actually name dropped him in the book. He's one of the few people where I named a specific name. I love AJ. Me too. I'm such a fan of what he does and his approach to life. The pioneer.
Let's
testing
just
yourself.
Experiment. Get out there, geez. Derek, thank you so much, man. And I'd love to know about when the new book and when that's going to come out.
I like the way you think. I love your questions. I love your ongoing push to expand your mind, as we nerded out on earlier with the books that we love. So anybody listening to this, go to my website. The reason I do these interviews, as you can tell, I'm not here to promote anything. I like the people that I meet.
Yes, I think you seem like you want to help people or something in that.
Yeah, I like knowing people. I like learning from people. So it's one of my favorite things in life is when somebody says, hey, I just listened to Larry's podcast and this is me. And I live in Germany, and I'm doing this, or hi, this is me. I'm in Mexico, and I build guitars, and I think you should such and such. I just want to say hello. So I really like the people that I meet because they were listening to your podcast. So anybody, go to my website, sive.rs.
Are you,
and
it looks like you're off Twitter in a sense. You haven't posted.
Basically.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that a,
no, actually,
I
I've never had a social media app on my phone in my whole life. And I used to use their API from the command line.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Elon Musk came in and somehow like changed the API and now it just doesn't work anymore. So I'm like, I just stopped. I haven't gone in to fix it. Maybe I can, but I don't care enough.
Okay. All right.
My email inbox, somebody actually just said yesterday, I think maybe the reason why you're good at answering your emails is because you're not on social media. I'm like, no, that's true. Like maybe most people might spend an hour a day, maybe between TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter or something. I spend 0 minutes a day, a year on social media. And so I spend a couple hours a day in my inbox answering emails from strangers. And I really like that. It's more meaningful to me. I find it enjoyable. There's no ads. There's no hype. There's no twisted agendas. It's just one-on-one communication with people. And I really enjoy that. So yes, I answer all my emails and I really enjoy it.
You love emails. You answer emails. Yeah. Boy, that is
it's a nicer cool world than a social media stream.
I hadn't thought about it that way. You have time to reflect.
Yeah.
And you're not waiting through, anyway. Let's all go back to email. Let's drop some.
Yeah,
all right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Derek, thank you so much.
Anyway,
man.
Thanks, Larry.
Have a good one. Take care. Bye-bye. Well, that's a wrap. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed it, do share it with your friends and on your social platforms. Big thanks to Sam Williams, my audio guy, and the beautiful bumper music you're hearing is Michael Petrovich's Bella Luna. For all my show notes or resource links, visit larryweeks.com, and we will talk again soon.